So good afternoon. We're still going through the training, becoming your child's pastor. But this is specifically for people, parents with teenagers. Okay, so it's the same principle. Whether your child is 2, 22, 12, it's the same principles. But now depends on their ages. So I want to use a short time to actually break it down on how you can apply these biblical principles, these creative techniques on becoming your child's pastor using God's base standard for parenting, but specifically for parents with teenagers. Now you should understand that when the children become teenagers, they are not monsters. There's nothing different. It's just that they are thinking differently. A lot is happening in their age. Some things they are not telling you. So what you might have to do is that some things you would have taught when they are 8. You can still teach, but you don't teach it the way you should teach it when they were 8. Because you can't talk to an 18-year-old child the way you spoke to an 8-year-old child. Now, some things you would have taught when they were younger, if you didn't teach it then, you can now teach it when they are older, but want to use the same method. I mean, that for them, that's disrespectful. And for every human being, it's disrespectful. Though you're their parent, but they are looking at their self-worth and who they are. So you should understand now, if your children are already spiritually inclined, it will be a bit easier for you, okay? So I'm still going to talk about the same principles. But if your children are not already spiritually inclined, everybody's just doing their own thing, and this is the first time of actually introducing them to spiritual things. It is not something that you have to be, oh my God, where do I even start? It's not a problem. Remember, God wants them to meet and know Him more than you want to meet and know, more than you know them to want and meet Him. God wants to use them as world changers, and God wants to use them to fulfill destiny more than you want. So it shouldn't be a problem. God meets us wherever we are, okay? So all the principles I talked about in the parenting course we had, I'm now breaking it down, the techniques on how, if you're a parent of a teenager, what do you do? Now remember the principles is from Deuteronomy 6, from 6 to 11, and it says 1, talk about it when you're seated at home. I just want to do a recap so you remember. Talk about it when you're seated at home. Now, what you do when you now have teenagers is that you should still have a family Bible study, but it's something you have to call them informally. Don't be too rigid. Oh, I mean, assuming you've never had it before. Oh, I want us to meet every night. I want us to have a family time, and all of that and all of that. Now, when you want to start, this is for a family that's not already spiritually inclined. Remember, you're using creative wisdom. When you start in your first couple of days, let the family time, don't start with the Bible. Let it be talking about life things. So what are the life issues you're talking about? Oh, tomorrow you're going to talk about finance. Oh, you're going to talk about this. Oh, I'm going to talk about my life. Let it just be family time of like 15, 20 minutes. Or we're going to be having family. Call it, I know something came that we call gist time. So start like that, especially for children that are not spiritually inclined, that you know that they don't want to hear anything spiritual. Start with having a family time. It's called family gist time. Do it for like a couple of days. Let it be something that interests them. Say, oh, look, this family, we now know that with this quarantine, with this COVID, we all have to do things as a family. We have to help ourselves and all of that. So you're talking about the digital world tomorrow. You're talking about cyber world. Oh, you're talking about making money in the new age. So everybody, if even be things that regular things about relationship, if your children are much older, just start every day 15, 20 minutes. But remember, you're intentional. You're in the next second 2 weeks, you begin to dive into the Bible. But let it just be that first have a family time. Make it very informal, and then you start. But if your family is already spiritually inclined, you guys already have family Bible study time, but it is not strong, or you guys have family Bible study time, but it's not as robust as it should be. It's just easy. Just let them look that the Lord spoke to you, and then right now you feel that you have to do more. You start with them. There's so many parents, and that when you look at yourself, you feel that if God could use Moses' mother to breed 3 children, and these were siblings that changed the world, meanwhile there were other women that you don't know why you feel that you have to do more in their lives and all of that. And then just for me, when I talk with my children, sometimes when I start, they're like, Mom, this story, we already know it. So there's nothing about my life they don't know. I always started with stories about me, how I failed, how I was the party rocker in school, how my parents almost died because they thought I was going to be, Don't come from the place of I'm teaching. When they know your weaknesses, I remember there was once I shared, and it was actually a general class, not Bible study, but a class I had with young teens. And I talked about how I lost my virginity, and it was very deep. And I talked about, because when children know how vulnerable you are, they can open up to you, especially teenagers. When they don't know you, they don't know your depth, they're always a mess that, oh, they think I'm bad. But when they know that you've been there, they open up to you. And because your child, when you're teaching, that is why I said you have to teach them from the place of your depth. When you're not deep and you're just teaching to teach, it doesn't do much, you know. So I remember I taught from my heart. I talked about how I lost my virginity, how naive I was, how vulnerable, and everything. And when we finished there, the girls were sober. But my daughter came to me, my second daughter then, back then. She said, oh, Mom, I didn't know this was how you lost your virginity. I feel really bad for you. I'm so sorry. And it really touched me. It's going to help. I'm going to try to keep mine based on how I just thought. I wasn't being particular about, you know, I taught from the depth of my being. And I was just teaching. But the first thing for teenagers to connect is, please do not come to them like you're super spiritual, you're spiritual anything when you're teaching. Come from the depth of where you are. Sometimes when they ask questions, tell them, honestly, I don't know. You really do not have to know anything. Do you understand? And then you ask people around, well, okay, help me. Just don't worry. I'm going to find out the answer for this thing. They open up because they're bottling in a lot. But when they see that you're vulnerable, so many children, even my biological children, other children, is that when I finish teaching, they come to me and I just know that there's a connection because I don't teach. And they're also tired of hearing Joseph, Abraham, Jacob, and St. Paul. Teach them because the world is visual. So when you're telling them, tell them about yourself and about uncles that they know. Sometimes when I teach, I tell them, you know that our cousin. And I say, you know that family member, they are watching. No, you have to tell them. So you're bringing the Bible alive to them. But so sometimes it's just about teaching them, it's about start with inspirational things so they can connect with you, okay? That's for teenagers because what they want to hear is real life things. When their spirit begins to link to your spirit, then you can go deeper. So I'm talking about, and then for your family Bible study time, the way you can make, especially for teenagers, it can be physical or it can be online. Because they live more in the digital world, okay? So what you're trying to do is to make them know, because they're going to live in the digital world all their life, so you can as well just introduce. So what I did, growing up, my children when they were teenagers, some of them are now grown up, but we still do that, is that sometimes when I want to teach, I go on YouTube. We might be teaching something on the power of negativity. And I would remember you have to born. You have to born. It's something you would have learned things. You would have gone to research. So you see, I see some YouTube messages that are very good. I say, Family Bible Study today. Look, because it's online, they connect. You're not sitting down every day to do the Bible opening. And I open something on somebody that's talking about negativity. A pastor, somebody that has spiritual anointing that I know is strong. It could be 10 minutes sermon. So we listen, we share, everybody is excited about it, you know. And the same thing I could have still taught. And then maybe tomorrow, the next day, I want to teach the same thing, but I'm now the one teaching it. And on day 3, I say, oh, you know, you're the one teaching us about negative power of confession. So you get ready. I remember once we traveled, we were in NOLA for holiday, and because anywhere we go, because it's not a family tradition, whether we go on vacation abroad, whether we're here, no matter what happened, because it's something we did, even we all know that family Bible study, family gist time is a tradition, you know. And so after what I was trying to do is you're putting a legacy in your children. So it's not like you're struggling for them not to go to learn about God, no. But you're doing it in more creative ways that is in their age. So I remember we were in NOLA then, and it was my son's time. And then, because we usually have it we at home, back home when they were younger, we used to have family Bible study at home, you know. But when we were all there, I went to meet them in the US, and it was a holiday period, you know. And during holiday, we were on holiday, everybody was going out and we'll come back late. So we now said, like, this thing we're doing is not good. Our family Bible study is rushed. That what we'll now do is that we'll now do it in the mornings when we wake up after breakfast. We do it in so that throughout the day we can now go out, okay? So it was already a pattern, a part of our life schedule. So it wasn't like, oh, we're on holiday now, we're being bogged down. I don't know if you understand. And then because we all understood the importance, including the children. So part of what my son, I think one day was my son's time to teach. And then the hotel had a very big screen. We didn't know he had taken his time, he had learned, probably because he was even lazy to study the scripture, to prepare and all of that. And then what he did was that he just went and clicked on something, and he had done something, looked at it, and it was so very good. And when we came, I remember what he taught about. This was over 3 or 4 years ago, was encourage each other, whatever happens. And then he taught about it. And most of the things, you know, now, in the course of him preparing to teach us that, and I'm sure he learned a few things, and everybody was okay because he was changing slides, changing smart TV, changing. So part of what you want to do, if you have to do is just engage them. It doesn't have to be you carrying the Bible. Imagine if St. Paul was still carrying the was still carrying the old traditional Bible. Do you understand? So engage them, go to YouTube. Thank God we have smart TVs, Google in anything, but you would have sat down to research and get them involved. That today, oh, you're taking us on the power of imagination. Oh, today you're taking us on prayer. Oh, today you're taking us on tongues. Tell everybody this week, this is what we're learning. Everybody go and study your own day. So when they finish, you now wrap it up. But introduce them. And what you also do is that when you guys sit down to listen to sermons or online, using this as a family Bible study time, you're trying to introduce them to a community life online. Because that's the truth. You don't see anybody sharing tracts on the road. Neither do you see people preaching to people on the road. Everything they're online. We now have online streets. We have the Instagram streets. We have the YouTube streets. We have various streets. Do you understand? So what you have to do intentionally is to be intentional about teaching them. So what you're doing is that when you introduce them, I know a woman. And I also want to tell you, please, what fed you might never feed your child. So don't think that your pastor that led you to Christ is the pastor, that his sermon will change your child. That is one mistake we make about teenagers. So many teenagers have come to me and said, Chineke, I don't even want to go back to church. I hate church, it's so boring. Because what fed you will not feed them. Where your pastor talks, you have anointing. Where your pastor talks, they feel nothing. So you have to find out their own prophet in their generation. That is part of what I said you're going to born. Do you understand? So you're going to be very intentional about it. What fed you will not feed them. So don't insist that because you went to this church. My children growing up, after when they relocated and came back, I knew that our church was not feeding them again. I had to follow them. I went from church to church until they finally found a church. They said, Mom, we actually connect with this. And because of them, while they were home then, I started going to that church. So I'll go to my own traditional Anglican church, because my husband is a priest. I'll go there, we'll finish church. And then I will now follow them to the churches. And on Wednesdays, midweek, I went to those churches with them. And when they closed, when they went back to school, I continued going to those churches. Do you know why? Because you can't just leave your child somewhere. Remember I said you're going to born. It is work. You have to be intentional. And when I found out some of these places were, and I found out that the way they did worship and everything was more exciting. So you can't dull a child's life and let him sit in church in front of one church pew or one thing and say, just listen. We're not talking about activity, we're talking about productivity. So you have to find out what fed you will not feed your child. The spiritual man that fed you will not feed your child. So when you introduce them to, I know a woman, a parent that at least in my estate, we were talking the other day, she had prayed and cried for her son to come to the full realization of who Jesus Christ is, but nothing happened. Then she started praying. But I told you there's a season in parenting, especially with teenagers, you talk less but you pray more. And then do you know what happened? Luckily, to the glory of God, she ran into an online thing which she introduced him to. One thing led to the other. She managed to put him online. He listened to a preacher, and from there, I'm telling you, this guy is burning. He sends her videos on said, Mom, if not, she said, Chineke, this is one of the best things that happens to me. So you have to know the age they live in. So that's the first intro. You have to know that your teenagers intentionally get online, find spiritual mentors, find spiritual things. So their own Bible study does not have to be to sit down like normal. Introduce them to YouVersion. YouVersion is a very strong tool. If you have 4 children, for instance, introduce them to look for YouVersion that meets YouVersion apps, Bible devotional that meets their need. A child could like sports. There's a YouVersion that talks about God using sports. There's one that talks about God using fashion. Find the different things they enjoy. When you find out all of these things they enjoy, now this is what now happens. Each person, you now tell them, oh, let me read this with you. You know how you share. Now, if you don't know this is another different thing. You might have to come back for a different course, because a YouVersion has made it in such a way that 7 people can share the same version, so that every day, when they comment, you know. When they are not commenting, you know. So every day when they read the Bible, so you share the same Bible devotional, and each person comments. That way, even if your children are all over the world, you guys are sharing the same version. So are sharing the same Bible devotional. So anybody that does not comment, you now know that they've not been reading the Bible, and then you go back and talk to them. These are things you cannot play, you can't downplay, and you can't play with. So sometimes if you have 4 children and they have the 4 different interests, you go and say, oh, let me read this with you. Like my last daughter now, there's a version, a place, she said, oh, Mom, it's been dry, I've not been able to read much. I found out a version for her. I said, I think you will like this particular devotional. It's talking about, I can't remember right, I think she was overwhelmed because she's taking SAT and all of that. So I said about business and overwhelm. My son also has another, I think he likes finances or something we're talking about. I sent him a version of finances. So they are all different in different angles, but we're all doing, now this person doesn't know I'm doing this Bible app with this person. This person doesn't know, but they're all introduced to it. So my son, somebody will say, son, Alpha, I've not seen you comment on the U version. Haven't you been reading? He said, oh, Mom, I haven't read for 2 days. So that helps me, though he's not at home. I'm monitoring his spiritual mileage and also encouraging him because I know that there are so many things. Look, it is something you have to sit down. It is work. So that is why I said if you don't feed your own self, you cannot feed your child. So their family Bible study altar for teenagers doesn't have to be overstructured. If they are living away from home, you can harness this, or if they're also with you in the house, you guys can do it in creative ways using YouVersion and everything. That's the first intro, part 1. I will now break the other ones in the other video. I hope you learned something from this. Yeah.